Hello, everyone, and thanks for being here today. My name is Kelly Jensen, and I'm an Associate Director in the UCSD Career Center. And today we're fortunate to have several people joining us for the workshop. First, I have my colleague, Karen Dosher, here from the Career Center as well. Karen, you want to say hi?
Hi, everyone. Happy to be here today.
Karen typically works with international students, but she knows a lot about networking. So I wanted to invite her to join us today to share her perspective. I also have Tammy assisting me as usual with technical support. Tammy, hi.
Hello, everyone.
In addition, we have two student leaders joining us today, Sabrina Fernandez Ramirez. Sabrina, you want to say hi?
Hi everyone, my name is Sabrina. I'm a current fourth year International Studies business major. I'm excited to speak with y'all today.
And Helen Chang. Helen, you want to say hi?
Hi everyone. Yeah, I'm a third year studying business psychology and I work at the Career Center as well.
Thank you both. I also want to let you all know that this week's workshop is being recorded. So you're free to leave your camera on or turn it off if you prefer. Now, welcome to the 6th week of career coaching for social science majors. As you may already know, if you've attended previous events in the series, I've put these workshops together because these are common topics that students want to discuss with career advisors. We have been discussing a different topic each week, and you're welcome and encouraged to attend as many as you'd like. Today's topic is the second of two on networking. Last week, we covered the importance of and how to use online networking platforms. And this week, we'll focus on how to initiate conversations when networking and maintaining a professional impression throughout your communications. Please feel free to put questions in the chat box, and we'll do our best to address them as we go or at the end of the presentation. I also encourage you to schedule an appointment with me, with Karen, or any of the other career advisors in the Career Center if you'd like more individualized support as you start networking or for any other career-related topic. Now, let's talk networking. So, can you go back, Tammy? These are the main areas that we're going to cover today. As I mentioned, initiating conversations and being able to introduce yourself. And we're going to focus on doing it virtually through email, but we can also talk about, doing it in person as well, since we are going to be moving into that in the coming months. There will be more opportunities for in-person networking as well as virtual networking. We'll also talk about keeping it professional every step of the way so that you really make a good first impression and a lasting impression as you communicate with various people in your network. And then we'll touch on following up and how to maintain communication while you're networking. Okay, next slide, please. So as we discussed last week, networking is really important. And just to emphasize why it's important, it helps you to develop and improve your skill sets, stay on top of the latest trends in your industry, keep a pulse on the job market, meet prospective mentors, partners, and clients, and gain access to resources that will foster your career development. So there are a lot of reasons why networking can help you and advance you in your professional journey. So hopefully we'll give you some good takeaways today that you can practice and put into action after today. Next slide, please. So think about who is in your current network. It's probably bigger than you think. I've listed some on here, but this, you could have more than this. Family and friends of family, fellow students and alumni, staff and faculty, if you're involved in a student club or organization, if you have a job, if you're doing any volunteer projects, If you're involved in any social groups outside of school and work, such as church groups, if you belong to a gym or outdoor sports activities, things like that. These are all people in your natural network. So utilize them. And, you know, if you're on LinkedIn and Tritons Connect, make sure that these people are part of your network. And, you know, you'll be exposed to a lot of different people through your natural network. Now, if you are wanting to reach out to someone outside of your network and make some new connections, this is what we'll talk about today. So next slide, please. So this is a page on Tritons Connect. And if you are not already signed up for Tritons Connect, I highly recommend that you do so, that you create a profile, because it's a really, really good resource for finding professionals within your industry who maybe majored in the same major that you have. If you're looking for a mentor, really good resource for connecting. And we talked a little bit about it last week, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it this week. But as you get started, you're going to, whether you're using LinkedIn or Tritons Connect, search the directory, find, you know, put in either a keyword or your major, your industry, so that you can search somebody and get a list of people that you can then do a little bit of research on, look at their profiles, see if it's somebody that looks like a good match. And you see the banner where it says willing to help. That's a really good indicator that that would be a great person to reach out to. So when you have done some research and decided that you want to reach out to somebody, how do you go about doing that? How do you write that message? And what do you say? What do you include in there? So I'm going to pass it over to Karen now to talk a little bit more about how to get started. So Karen?
Thank you, Kelly. Let's move on to the next slide. I'm going to talk about reaching out. But before I mention what to say to the person, I want to start by saying that the goal of networking is not to get a job. The goal of networking is to make genuine connections with people, and making genuine connections with the right people is what leads to job opportunities. So effective networking is not one-sided or self-interested. It's really about creating these mutually beneficial relationships, and the quality of your network is more important than the quantity. So you should be building relationships among people with a common interest or a common profession or special interest. So you might connect with people who work in your desired career field. You might connect with professionals who inspire you. You know, essentially you're starting a conversation with a stranger and you're trying to get them to advocate on your behalf. Maybe you're getting them to be an extra set of eyes and ears in your job search, or perhaps you're getting them to pass your resume on to the hiring manager. So like Kelly said, you want to do some research on people first, be selective about who you're reaching out to, really have a good reason about why you're reaching out to that particular person. So how do you start the conversation? Well, a common mistake is to send out LinkedIn connection requests to anyone and everyone. Another mistake is to send a connection request without also including a personalized message. Those requests are easy to ignore. And if you send a generic message, those are also easy to ignore. So you really want to send a personalized message that you think will resonate with the person you are requesting to connect with. Be your authentic and professional self. You know, show that you're human, show that you have a genuine interest in what the other person does, and try to show that you could be a valuable connection for them as well. It's really great if you have a mutual acquaintance or maybe a shared interest or some other connection with them already. So here's a sample message. Dear Emily, I'm studying international relations at UCSD, curious about possible career paths. I saw that you're class of 2008 and now work in the field of higher education. Would you be open to connecting with me? I'd like to follow your work. So this message shows an interest in knowing more about that person's profession and their career journey. Also, it highlights our mutual connection. We're both members of the UCSD community. It does have to be a short message because there's a character limit for LinkedIn connection request messages. But once that person is in your LinkedIn network, you can send longer messages. And also before the pandemic, it was a normal part of networking to invite someone to meet in person, maybe for coffee or beer. And it's becoming normal to have these interactions virtually. So you could invite someone for a virtual coffee break or even a phone call. And here's a sample message asking somebody to chat. You might say, Dear Emily, I'm a student at UCSD studying international affairs. I saw that you finished your degree in 2008 and now work as a national and international community service program manager. I'd like to learn about your career journey. Would you be willing to chat with me for 15 minutes sometime next week? So you're requesting a little bit of their time, and you're also setting a time frame to meet. 15 minutes, sometime next week. So after you send the message, if you don't get a response from them within a week or two, do send a follow-up reminder message. It's very common to send 2 messages before you get a response. You shouldn't feel like you're bothering them if it's just 2 messages. Keep in mind that people generally like helping others. It feels good to help someone. However, people often get busy with work and life. They forget to respond. They read your message, but they just forgot. So sending a second message shows that you are actually interested in hearing their story. And then as a general guideline, I will say that if you don't hear from them after a second time, they probably won't be very helpful for you. So at that point, focus your energy on making connections with people who are going to be helpful. There are plenty of other people that you can connect with who are willing to help, who are willing to offer their advice and support in your journey. So let's go on to the next slide. Let's talk about once you've actually connected. So let's say you connected with somebody and they're willing to talk with you. Fantastic, that's a huge success. The next step is to set up a specific day and time to meet. Maybe plan to chat over Zoom or a phone call. Alternatively, you could do an email as well, but Zoom or phone call or in person are preferable. So mark it on your calendar. You don't want to forget. The whole point of these connections is that you're showing your level of professionalism. Also show that you're considerate of the other person's time. So do plan to meet on time, or at least give them some advance notice if you will be late or if you need to reschedule. You want this person to have a good first impression of you, because imagine that they could be a potential future coworker or supervisor for you. So really try to leave that good first impression. And of course, be prepared to lead the conversation because you invited them to chat. Prepare your brief self-introduction ahead of time and also have a list of questions that you want to ask. The conversation really should focus mostly on the other person. Get them to talk about their career experience, industry insights, and lessons learned. You are simply directing the conversation by asking them some informational questions. And based on what you know about that person prior to meeting them, think about what types of information you would like to know, what types of questions would be valuable for you, and prepare a list of at least 5 questions that you want to ask. So let's go to the next slide. Let's see some more details about these conversations. So you may have heard the term informational interview. I like to call these informational conversations because it really is just a conversation. It's 15 minutes. It's the amount of time that you would have a coffee break. In that time, you can introduce yourself in I would say about 60 seconds. And then you have time for probably 4 to 6 questions, 4 to 6 good questions. If you have additional questions you want to ask them, let's say you have a list of 25 questions that you want to ask this person, fantastic. Save those for another time. It gives you a reason to connect with them again and continue the conversation into the future. So remember that networking is really about building up these relationships, but it's also about maintaining relationships into the future. So kind of save something to talk about for the next time. So your introduction, you could include just very briefly your name, your major, your year in school. Also talk about accomplishments that make you unique and memorable. You can mention your career interests and then also something you would like help with. And then the questions you could ask, for example, how did you become interested in this field? How did you begin your career? You know, what was your first job after college? What do you like most about your work? What are some current challenges in your role? What advice would you give someone who's considering this type of work? Can you suggest anyone else I should contact for additional information? And would it be okay if we stay connected? Could I reach out to you if I think of any additional questions? So I'll turn it back over to Kelly now. Let's talk about additional questions that might be good.
Thank you, Karen. Those are great examples. And I'd like to ask the group, what might be some other questions you'd like to ask a professional you're meeting for the first time? Feel free to unmute yourself if you want to share out loud, or please write them in the chat box if you have some ideas. And this includes maybe a question you are thinking about, but you're not sure if it's appropriate for this particular situation. So can anyone think of any other questions that you might want to ask if you've thought about reaching out to people? So Anand, what kind of skills do you practice, exercise in your daily workday? That's a great question. That's a really good question to get an idea of what the job entails and what is expected in that position. Nama, I hope I said your name right. What are some hardships and obstacles you've faced in this career path? That's a really good question too. Knowing about the challenges that might be a barrier or something to learn about to do better in the industry. Very good question. Helen, what are some opportunities students can take on to pursue a similar path like yours? Kat, what is most stressful about your job and what makes it worth it for you? Oh, that's a really good question, because I think in no matter what profession or industry you're in, there's going to be stress there and there's going to be varying stress levels, but finding out what makes it worth it that's a great question. I like that. Thank you all for your thoughtful insights. Like Karen said, I would advise having a list of questions in order of priority and be mindful of time. So that way, you know, if you don't get to all your questions, at least you've got the most important ones answered because you kind of put them in order. And you want to be respectful of the person's time, as you may not get to all the questions. And as Karen said, it could also be an opportunity to follow up. I know I've heard some situations where people will talk a lot more than you expected them to talk. So you might not get a chance to ask all your questions. So that's another good reason to kind of have things in order of importance that you want to find out about. And who knows, you might have new questions come up that build on the conversation that you have And it really does give you an opportunity to say, hey, you know, I'd really like to stay connected. Can we meet again sometime in the future and see if you can schedule that? So yeah, do we have any questions? Can we go to slide number 8, please?
Yeah, so I totally agree with what Kelly said, and being mindful of the other person's time. Even if you're having a great conversation and you know you have so many more questions to ask and more things to talk about, try to limit it to that 15 to 20 minutes. Even if the person says, hey, yeah, you know, I'm happy to chat longer, great. Set up another time in the future, you know, to ask those additional questions. You know, because you don't want to get to the point where you've asked everything and you have nothing left to say. And then how do you continue? Like, how do you maintain that connection afterwards? So let's talk more about maintaining those connections. You know, after you've had that conversation with somebody, send a thank you note within a few days, you know, ideally within 1 to 2 days afterwards. You know, really show your appreciation for their time and the energy that they put into chatting with you. And sending a follow-up message shows that you value this relationship, this connection that you've had with them. A thank you note can include information about what was the most valuable takeaway that you learned from the conversation. And if the person offered any advice, let them know how you plan to apply that advice. And so now you have a written record of the conversation that you can refer back to when you connect with this person again and you continue the conversation in the future. You remember details about them and you remember details about the conversation. It makes them feel valued and appreciated. And it's just it's a better way to maintain that connection. So I do suggest that you keep records of all the connections you make. You might consider keeping a spreadsheet to keep organized as you meet new people. Or find a method that works best for you to keep track of this. Because imagine if you were trying to remember the details of all the conversations you've had with hundreds of people over the years without writing any of it down. It's going to be very challenging. So do keep records, keep written records, and especially those emails that you send to people, that's a written record of your conversation. So like I said, you know, you're keeping records of who you've connected with. Make note of where they work, what they do, what you learned from them, and the date that you last connected with them or you last contacted them. So this way you can set reminders for yourself about when you're going to reach out again. You might choose to give them updates every few months, or reach out to them just to say hello, see how they're doing. You could congratulate them on a promotion or wish them a happy holiday, you know, but occasionally reaching out is a way of maintaining those connections so that you stay fresh in their mind. When they're thinking about you, because you keep reminding them, they're going to be more willing to kind of be those eyes and ears for you in your job search. So if they hear of a job opportunity that they think you might be interested in, they're going to pass it along to you. And of course, if you apply to a job at the place where they work, send them a message to let them know which position you applied for. They might even refer you to the hiring manager. Just got your resume pulled to the top of the stack. So very important. So again, networking is really a way to gain visibility for future opportunities. So start building up your professional network before you're looking for a job, and do continue networking even after you get a job, because you want to anticipate your next career move beyond that. So with that, I will turn it back over to Kelly.
Thank you, Karen. That was such great information. Does anybody have any questions so far on either initiating conversation? What does that initial conversation look like, or the follow-up? Seeing any questions come in, so we'll move along. Like I mentioned earlier, we're lucky to have two students, Sabrina and Helen, with us today, who are kind enough to share some of their own experiences with networking. I'll let them introduce themselves first, then we'll hear about some of their successes and challenges in regard to networking. So Sabrina, let's start with you.
Yes, of course. So hi again. My name is Sabrina Fernandez. I'm a current 4th year International Studies business major with a minor in supply chain management. Many of you might know me from the International Studies Student Association. I'm the current president there, and I've done other things around campus, like studied abroad. I work on campus as well, so it's nice to be here.
Thank you. Helen, you want to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Helen Chang, and like I mentioned earlier too, I'm a 3rd year studying business psychology with a minor in design, and I'm involved in women in business on the exec board. So I do a lot of like speaker outreaches for events, and apart from that too, I am involved in the Career Center for drop-in advising.
Thank you again to both of you for being here today. My first question for you is, tell us about how you identified the people you chose to reach out to and how you initiated contact. How long did it take before you received a response?
Yeah, of course, I can take this one. Well, first of all, being a 4th year, I've had my varying examples of networking. Back when I was a 1st year, I was still trying to figure out like what area I wanted to go in within business. So when I reached out to professionals, I mainly looked at LinkedIn when I was applying to jobs randomly. So I would look at companies and be like, okay, let me look at professionals within this company, see similar like interests, similar career paths. If they're women, that was a big appeal for me. If they're also like Hispanic or Latino, that was also an appeal to me. So that's how I initially started, and I like gained some connections from that. But now that I have a better idea of what I want to go into, like I mentioned, I have a supply chain minor. So right now in my job search, I look into people that have like procurement, logistics, that type of area for their jobs. And I'm very specific at like who I network with. So that's how how it's changed throughout the years. I do use tools like I continue using LinkedIn. I've used Tritons Connect recently. And then I also have the Tritons to Work mentee. That's been really beneficial. In terms of how long it took to receive a response, this varies a lot, right? So right when I first started, I was new to networking. I was doing very generic messages, and it was very rare to receive a response back, especially because I reached out to people who were like the CEOs or like the main managers. These people are very busy, right? And they're seeing a student that has like around 10 connections. They don't have that much time to reply to me. So instead, what I focused my attention on later years was focusing on someone that's just a manager, supervisor, or even someone that just entered that position to see how they're doing through there. And that has been proven to be more successful.
Yeah, and to add on, aside from looking for people from industries that I'm interested in or like companies I'm interested in, I think another good way too is to look at the LinkedIn for UCSD and look at the alumni category, because there's going to be a lot of people who put themselves like who graduated from UCSD, and I think they are also like more willing to help as well because they can see that you are a current student at UCSD too. And then also make sure to send like a personal LinkedIn connection if you are interested in speaking with them or networking with them, because they will be more inclined to like respond.
Yeah, so I want to add one more thing. Another way that I was able to expand my network, so depending on the department you're in, so for me, I looked at Rady and I saw that they have a supply chain institute, and I look at the advisor board. So I contacted everyone in that advisor board, and I actually got replies back, and they're like, hey, just let me know if you need any guidance. We want to schedule a talk. And I have scheduled talks with them, and I've learned more about what are the areas that I should go within supply chain, what's the more profitable, what's the more enjoyable companies to look at. all these different things that I proven more beneficial. So even, if you're in a history department, look through UCSD history department. Since you're already a UCSD student, you're gonna get an easier way into that network.
Great examples and advice. Appreciate you both sharing that. My next question for you is, how did you prepare for your first conversation? So maybe think of one example where you reached out to someone in particular. How did you prepare for that? And did it end up going as you expected?
I can go first. So I think in general, I usually come up with a list of questions beforehand that I'm curious about learning from that person. So I also just research the industry, the company, like the person's past and current experience. And then also like what, apart from like looking at what I can gain from them from this informational interview, I also think about like what they can gain from this informational session as well, because we are like taking up each other's time. And since they are pretty busy, I also just prioritize like the questions I feel like could be answered without like me being able to search it up. I prioritize those questions, and the more generic questions, I save it for the end if there's time.
Yeah, I for sure agree, Helen. In addition, also, Karen, you mentioned great questions and great guidelines. So I really suggest that you follow through with that. For sure, a big emphasis on personalized questions, making sure that they can tell that you've done your research, right? But apart from just questions to prepare, your mentality going into this informational conversation, this conversation you're gonna have, is of thinking of them as equals, like humanizing the person. I know when I was, first year, second year, I was so nervous. I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna talk to these people. They're so up there and I'm here. Helping understand that they were all where we are at one point, right? We all started at the beginning, and then they're very open to help, especially, they're replying back, they're scheduling time with us. And then once you're on the call and the video call and you realize, you're like having fun or like you're talking, it depends on the person, right? Some people are more professional, want to keep it professional. But at least personally, I've seen a lot of people, even just talk, like they have their dogs pop up in the video, or they mention like, oh yeah, my kid also studied that, or you find like a common interest, and that makes the conversation flow way easier because you're confident, you're comfortable, and you can get more out of it.
And with those conversations that you had, how did you follow up with the conversation? And are you in regular communication with the people that you've reached out to? Maybe you can share a couple of examples of ones that were shorter term, ones that were longer term, and how did that come to be?
So I can start off with this one. In terms of shorter term, that happened more earlier on in first and second year. As of now, since I'm making use, I'm looking back at my network and, seeing what industries I'm interested in. And of course, having that informational interview with a side agenda of like potentially, having an insight into the career job search and that area. So I'm currently reaching out to someone who's like in Kind Humans. It's a local San Diego company, and I'm making sure that we're connecting and discussing like questions that I might have about the position or what it looks like to work there and what encouraged them to work there. So that's been going well. We've been conversating about that. In addition, like I mentioned, I also signed up for Take the Triton to Work, and my mentor has been really helpful, and he's actually connecting me with, although he's not in the same industry that I'm looking into, he's actually connecting me with other professionals that are also UCSD alumni from his class, as well as people that work in his industry, which is in Germany. So I don't know if I plan on moving to Germany, but it's good to know that I have those options as well.
Yeah, and to add on, I think on LinkedIn it's easy to like follow up as well, since there is like, you can see the previous message you guys have conversations on. So I would say you can always just like give an update on what you guys talked about last time. Like maybe you were working on something and they offered like, oh, you should take on a project. Then you can like follow up by saying like, oh, here's an update to my project. And then you can also mention that you would like to schedule another like networking chat another time soon, just to talk about anything else, like other new questions that you had. And I also know that on LinkedIn, people also just comment regularly on the person's post or share news or articles or any information that they think might relate back to the person. So I think those are like some ways you can keep follow up with them. And I know in the chat, someone did ask about like following up to someone that you haven't reached out to for a long period of time. And I think like um, I feel like you don't have to like worry too much about it because if you do want to like catch up with them, you can always just be like, how are you doing? Like, it's been a while. Like, I would love to like have another coffee chat with you. Or similar to like the methods I talked about earlier, like you can talk about an update, you can talk about a post they had or like share article they had. Another way too is that you can reach out to them near like holidays, and that can give you like a better excuse in a way, like, oh, happy like Merry Christmas, like I hope your families are doing well, and then like start off like whatever you wanted to talk about with them.
Yeah, those are great responses. So I have just a few questions for Sabrina and Helen. I know you've touched on this a little bit already in some of your answers, but maybe going into more detail, how has the networking experience been beneficial to you?
I can take this one first. Like I mentioned before, just getting a better idea of what path I want to go into regarding business is so broad, right? As many of you know. So being able to speak to different professionals and see, hey, based on the trends and just what is necessary right now, you should go into this industry. And if like I see that you have strengths in this area, it looks like you would work well here. Because these people have worked in various industries and professions. So it was nice to get that insight. In addition, just going in with like a networking mindset. An example was like when I started abroad in China 2019. It's been a while. And when I went there, before even going, I wanted to have a job, an internship in China. And while I was interviewing, I was very honest about saying, yes, I'm excited to work with y'all, but this is actually not aligned with my interests for an internship. Maybe I shouldn't have done that, but I'm glad I did, because through that, she's like, I'm glad you're able to be open about that. I actually know someone that is hiring within supply chain. Like I'll get them connected with you. And through that like interview actually led to another position that right away they're like, oh, we heard good things about you. Do you want to join our team? And I'm like, yes, of course. So just going in with like a networking mindset and knowing what you want out of something, like and not like I knew I wanted to go into supply chain and explore that area. So I was clear about that, and that's what ended up happening.
Yeah, as for me, I think networking has allowed me to like grow personally and professionally too. Like Sabrina mentioned, like being able to talk to a lot of professionals, you get a clear idea of like what you want to do and what you don't want to do, but also just explore, like be open-minded to like other opportunities. Like maybe you haven't thought about like going to a like completely different path, but you still want to get to know that path a little bit. You can talk to these professionals since they are experienced within that field to see like what do they do on a daily basis, and maybe it sparks like new inspiration to like explore that field as well. And for me, similar to Sabrina, like I didn't really know what I want to do. I'm still like exploring as well, but I'm closer to my goal. So networking really helped out with that. And another thing too is that it made me more comfortable speaking with like professionals and learning that they're all willing to help. Because initially, like as a first year, when I was starting to talk to people, I felt like it was a little intimidating. Like you don't know what questions you should ask, or like just talking to someone that's like higher up than you. But in reality, like if they are willing to chat with you, they do want to help you. So I think that made me more comfortable talking to like just in general, and talking before the pandemic, I was able to meet with some people in person. So that was like a different experience as well. And I think it was really nice because I was able to actually see the company and like the culture by visiting there. So I think that's another way that networking has benefited me. And virtually too, it is more convenient. So I think virtually it was nice as well because I was able to talk to people that wasn't in my area, like even not within my country as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So it sounds like networking has been very beneficial to both of you. And when you talk about it, you make it sound kind of easy, like it's easy to get started. Like it's a little bit intimidating at first, but once you get into it, it's easy. So maybe you could talk about some of the challenges that you've had in the process of networking.
Yeah, I can go first. I think a challenge that I still have is just like maintaining the relationship in general. I think it's a lot easier to start the conversation and start that initial like informational interview, but to keep it consistent and follow up is something I do have difficulty with, just because if you do end up talking to a lot of professionals, there's a lot of people you need to keep track with on top of like your academic responsibilities or other responsibilities like work or organization. So, and also another thing too with that is just like even with the initial conversation, and you like had a great conversation with them, it still like has like some kind of barrier to it. So it is like harder to keep it going. However, a way to tackle that is that I use Notion, and there is this template on like CRM, which like you track people. It's similar to like having a spreadsheet of like everyone you talk to, and then it like automatically tells you like, oh, after 3 months you should update them and things like that. And I think that's a really good way to like keep consistency. Yeah, so that's like the main difficulty I have. Another difficulty I had in the past was just like reaching out to people initially. Similar to what Sabrina said, like it is like easy to have like a more generic connection request. However, if you do once you do more research on the person, like looking at specific experience from them or looking at like past posts or articles they read, um, I think that was really helpful because that is more specific than saying like, oh, I'm interested in this field. Like, can I talk to you? You can talk about like, oh, I read your article on this and I think it's like a great resource, whatever, like more specific on the article. And then talking about like, I do have more questions on the article if we can have a chat. So having like more specific personalized requests, I think will be more helpful as well.
Yeah,
Do you mind, sorry, Sabrina, do you mind repeating what the tool was that you were using to keep track of people we have?
Yeah, I was gonna put it in the chat, but it's basically, I use it from Notion. And if you go to Notion, there is a CRM template. And if you are interested in Notion, you can use it for like other, just like productivity, like note-taking tools as well. And if you use your student email, you get like the premium for free.
I'm for sure going to use that. Thank you, Helen. Yeah, I totally agree with the challenges, that the same ones that I've had as well. One current challenge that I have, so like I mentioned in the past, I've networked to know more about the industry, know more about them. Now that I'm about to graduate, I want to turn those connections into potentially transitioning to, hey, do you know if there's any open positions? Are they looking for someone? So transitioning from getting to know about the job to, can I have a job? Right? So I don't, making sure you don't come off as strong and seeing that's like, oh, this all was just for that. So making sure that you're careful about the language you're using, making sure that it's not like, oh, hi, how's it been? I want a job. It's like reconnecting, updating them. I do agree with the updating. It's like, hey, I've learned this much. I've seen like what you told me about this. I took a class that you recommended, this course. I have a project management license now, or whatever that may be, update them. And then see where that conversation flows through. It's like, yeah, I'm looking for jobs right now. They might even ask, right? Because you are mentioning that you're a graduating senior, whatever that may be. They might mention, yeah, actually, I thought there was an opening right now. I'll mention, just make sure to send me your resume up to date and whatever happens. So just don't force it. That's one thing I've seen.
Actually, I do have remember another like more difficulty, I guess. I feel like for me, it's really hard for me to focus on a lot of things at once. So one thing I have difficulty with is just like keeping like similar to like earlier, like keeping it consistent to reach out to people or even new people to network because I'm like more caught up with school. But I think another tip with that is just like it's just like a mindset, like what you want. So I think if you want to like tackle that, like if you feel like you don't have time for networking, or if you feel like you don't know where to start, if you just make it consistent, like maybe do like 30 minutes like a week, or even like an hour daily, something like that, like make it into a routine. I think that would definitely make it easier for you to network with people and also make it easier as well.
That's great advice, Helen, especially, I mean, we're all juggling so many things these days. You've got to have a way to kind of keep track of it and prioritize. So Sabrina and Helen, thank you both very much for for sharing your experiences and your advice. That was really helpful, especially for those who haven't started yet. So I'm sure they'll find your stories really helpful. So Tammy, can we go on to the next slide? Great. So just to kind of round things out, I wanted to talk about other ways to connect. So we've been focusing mainly on connecting virtually because that's been our world for the last year. But, you know, attending networking events, both virtually and in person, when we're able to do that, that's a really good way to connect. There's a lot of opportunities to do that at UCSD. You'll find things, find events posted through Handshake, through the Career Center, through your departments, to be able to meet and hear from professionals in the industry, ask them questions. So definitely check out those events, see what interests you and give it a try. Consulting with faculty, advisors, and peers, those people who share your interest in the profession, in the industry, they're going to have a lot of contacts too. So share those contacts and see who might be valuable to reach out to, who they could connect you to. Joining a student organization is a great way to network, as I'm sure Helen and Sabrina will both agree. They're very involved in a lot of different events and connecting with departments on campus and students. So it's really a great way to build your network and get to know people. Becoming a member of a professional affiliation. So depending on what your interest is, you might want to get involved. For example, I'm a member of the Museum of Photographic Arts, and just because I enjoy it. So I pay a membership fee of like $20 a year, but I get invited to networking events and special things that are going on there. So that's something that you could look for as well if there's a professional affiliation that might be interesting to you. And then exploring social meetup groups like meetup.com, tons of groups on there. I don't know, I'm sure they're probably not super active right now, but that's also another resource to find ways to connect with people with like interests. They have, you know, hobbies, but there's also professional groups too, depending on what you'd want to be involved in. So final slide, please. Do we have any questions? You can see here as mine and Karen's email addresses if you would like to reach out to either one of us. If you want to do any individual coaching appointments, please schedule through Handshake. But we're happy to take the last couple minutes here to answer any questions. If you want to direct them to Helen, Sabrina, Karen, or myself, we're here to help. And also feel free to unmute if you prefer, if you want to just ask a question. Thank you, Amory and Angela, for being here. Appreciate it. All right, how do I access the recording? The recordings of these workshops will be on the Career Center's YouTube page, and it'll take a few days to get us up, but that's where you can find this one and several other ones as well. Kat, I see you have a message to me, so I don't lose it. Do you mind emailing that to me, and then we can continue that when the workshop is over? That would be great. So I'd like to thank you all for participating today, and an extra special thanks to Sabrina and Helen for sharing their experiences and advice. Please join me next week for part 1 of the final section of this series, interview preparation. I'll have an industry professional joining me to discuss how to set yourself up for success, whether it's for a phone, video, or in-person interview. We'll share lots of great tips and be available for all of your questions. I hope to see you then. And remember, you can always sign up for individual career coaching appointments anytime on Handshake. Have a great rest of the day.